This morning, a lot of people are comparing a photograph that Reuters photographer Cheney Orr took of a black woman sitting in a Metro rail car in Washington, D.C., surrounded by members of the Patriot Front white nationalist organizations on their way down to march and rally in Washington, to the 1955 image of Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, which sparked the Montgomery bus boycott and ultimately the civil rights era marches and movements and ultimately the acts. I want to talk about the differences and similarities in those photos because obviously the comparisons is worthy. People are saying that the Orr's photo is worthy of a Pulitzer Prize, perhaps. And there are just starking differences and similarities. So I'm going to tell you one difference in the beginning, and I'm going to talk about some more differences in the end, but I'm going to sandwich it with the similarities. The one difference, obvious, is that unlike 1955 America, 2026, the woman in that photo did not have to give up her seat to the white man. Now let's talk about the similarities real quick. In both versions of America, white supremacy exists. In both versions, the white population is still overrepresented in all areas, in wealth, net worth, in academia, professors, in Congress, houses of Congress, the home ownership, government contracts, senior positions in the federal government. That continues. What also continues is things like redlining, economic access. The school to prison pipeline actually has been exacerbated. Home appraisal, interest rate and lending rate, arrests, convictions, and sentencing disparities continue. Access to capital disparities exist. White nationalist groups like the Patriot Front existed back then in the form of KKK, but obviously they had more power and the laws actually protected them. Nowadays, more laws are against this sort of intimidation. But let's get into some differences. Why these people are grieved? If everything I just told you is true, they're not losing economic power, then why are they so grieved? Why are they so upset? It's because the politicians are pandering to the perception that access opportunities, even minuscule opportunities of people of color elevated to CEO, getting acting roles even, seeing them more prominently have opportunities is given the perception that they're getting less opportunities. And as the stats I told you reveal, that is absolutely not true. But we know the politicians rely on grievance politics to stay in power so they can continue to do absolutely nothing for those people while benefiting from tax cuts and just really getting richer and padding their pockets. And so what they are doing is pandering to this white replacement theory, promoting identity, patriotism, nationalism as an identity makes it harder and harder to do as the country becomes more and more diverse, including diverse of people who cannot necessarily blend in and accept the offer that Americans offered to the early immigrants from Ireland, Germany, and Italy to shed and get rid of all of the things that make them culturally unique to their own countries, to adopt these melting pot myth and just become more American. In exchange, they'll give them power. The less people can take that offer up, because if you practice a different religion, if you physically look different, it becomes harder and harder for you to assimilate and to benefit from white supremacy. So the more people cannot benefit from white supremacy and cannot assimilate clearly, populate the country, nationalism is no longer a tool that the wealthy and the elite can use to rally, corral, and keep their rural America in line and in check and keep voting for them, though they do nothing for them. It makes it harder and harder for them to do that. And that's the frustration. And that's why behind all of this are the wealthy people. 400 men managed to march down there, no one asking who paid them to get there. Though when there's millions and millions of people marching against Donald Trump, people are like, who paid? You know, every accusation is a confession with these people. Look into that, somebody. America, a nation that was inhabited by natives and is a nation essentially founded on the principles of welcoming immigrants, all of a sudden want that welcome to stop at European immigrants. You are in a country that was founded on the principles and concepts of come one, come all. One of the most prominent Republicans, Ronald Reagan, had this famous speech that said, like other places in the world, only in the United States, you can come from wherever you come from and become American. So they don't like that ideal. In fact, that they're not patriotic. they're supporting a man who seemingly wants to return the country back to its British roots and wants to be a king, and is having an affront to the Constitution every single day. The First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, the separation of powers, the concepts of federalism and states' rights. Donald Trump is impeding them every single day. I find it also interesting that in his 4th of July speech, he focused on communism and how we're going to fight communism. I see they've shifted from socialism. Now that Mondami is having so much success, as the Democratic Socialist Party are having so much more success, and it's being harder and harder for them to attack socialism, because when you attack socialism, people are like, yeah, I'll take some free daycare. You guys want free stuff? Yeah, I'll take that. I'm sure you, who's struggling with a bunch of your kids and can't go anywhere and have lots of opportunity, would appreciate some free daycare too. Someone told you that the government shouldn't be able to pay for free daycare, and all the money should be going to overstocking and bloated military and for wealthy people. They told you that's what you need. And they said, but Donald Trump said we can't afford daycare. He lied to you. So he shifted on to communism. Let's go to, what's the principles of communism? Let's go. Restricting opponents' political parties. Do you see Donald Trump attacking the blue states and Democratic states? Government controlling private entities. You've seen Donald Trump annex and get a piece of stake in TikTok, steal MP materials, Intel, AI, government setting prices instead of letting the market decide. Hello, Donald Trump's tariff policy. Control of the media, restriction on political dissent. This vice president went to try to secure a win for communist Viktor Orban, who just lifted sanctions on communist Russia. Every accusation is a confession with these people. Another major difference, I saw, I think the Klaxenstein brothers mentioned in a comment that the men on the right intimidated African Americans. That's another big difference. We're not intimidated. Like in the 1955s, the power dynamics was such, and because the groups like the KKK were able to use the government to sanction and greenlight and look the other way while the black communities were brutalized. Today in modern society, we look at them and see them as pathetic people who are grasping and frustrated that the one thing they had to give them power superiority over the other people, their race, is being eroded. They're seeing cultural relevance disappear, and they see that other groups, cultures, foods, language, aesthetics are actually dominating cultural landscape, magazines, newspapers, the media, the TV, movies, and that frustrates them. That's the only problem, that they don't want to share the limelight, and belief that sharing the limelight means decreasing their own power and authority, and that's not necessarily true. Only to the extent that the Republican Party is going to have to toss aside the nationalism, pandering to the minority, because the minority is not going to have as much power. The minute folks get energized and we increase voter turnout and active participation and civic participation, it's lights out for them. JJ Leader, each one teach one. Share, let's talk below.